Let me ask you something. Do avoidants ever regret breaking up with you? Do they lie awake at night, missing the sound of your laughter, the safety of your presence? Or do they just move on, as if you never mattered? I know the silence can make you feel erased. But here's the truth. Avoidants do feel regret. They just don't show it the way you expect. And sometimes the regret comes not in words, but in the quietest, most unexpected ways. In this video, we're going to go deeper than silence. We'll uncover what really happens inside the avoidant's heart after a breakup, and what that means for your healing. Number 1, the illusion of indifference. When an avoidant ends a relationship, the first thing you'll notice is not tears, not regret, not even hesitation. What you see is calm, almost a chilling calm. They might say something simple like, "I think it's better if we end things," and then walk away as if nothing inside them cracked. To the person on the receiving end, this feels brutal. It feels as though the months, maybe years, of love and intimacy meant nothing. How could someone detach so quickly? How could they not even look back? But here's the truth that most people don't realize. Avoidants are not heartless. They are not immune to pain. What they are is practiced. Practiced at suppressing, practiced at hiding, practiced at running from the very emotions that overwhelm them. See, the avoidant learned very early in life that closeness can be dangerous. Maybe it came from a childhood where their needs weren't consistently met. Maybe every time they wanted more love, more presence, more safety, they were met with rejection, criticism, or neglect. Over time, they built an emotional armor. Don't need too much. Don't feel too deeply. Don't let anyone close enough to hurt you again. So when they break up with you, what you're witnessing isn't a lack of feeling. You're witnessing a coping mechanism. Their silence, their calmness, their detachment. It's not absence of emotion, it's the wall they throw up to avoid drowning in it. A story to illustrate. Let's imagine someone named Daniel. Daniel loved his girlfriend, Emma, deeply, but as they grew closer, talking about moving in together, planning trips, sharing more vulnerability, he started to feel an invisible pressure in his chest. A voice whispered, "This is too much. She's going to need more than you can give. You'll disappoint her. You'll lose yourself." One evening, instead of telling Emma about that fear, Daniel did what avoidants often do. He pulled away. He said the relationship wasn't working, that he needed space, that maybe it was better to end things. Emma was heartbroken. She cried, begged for clarity, and asked, "Did you ever even love me?" And Daniel, staring at the floor, muttered, "Of course I did. But this is for the best." Then he left. To Emma, it seemed like Daniel had no regret. But later that night, when he was alone, something happened. The silence he created began to echo. He thought of her laughter, her way of remembering the little details, the warmth of her presence. But instead of leaning into those feelings, he numbed them. He watched videos, scrolled endlessly, buried himself in work. Because that's what avoidants do. They escape. Why they appear fine. So do avoidants regret breaking up? The answer isn't immediate. Right after the breakup, they feel relief. Yes, relief. The pressure is gone. The expectations, the intimacy that made them feel vulnerable, all of it is suddenly lifted. But that relief is temporary, and it masks something deeper. Fear. Fear that they couldn't handle the relationship. Fear that they'll never be enough. Fear that they just pushed away the one person who truly loved them. At first, though, you won't see that. All you'll see is the illusion of indifference. Because for avoidance, indifference is safer than honesty. It's easier to look cold than to admit they're scared. And that is the beginning of their regret. Not an instant wave, not a dramatic collapse, but a slow, creeping realization that comes when the silence they created starts to feel heavier than the closeness they ran from. Number 2. When regret starts to whisper. At first, the avoidant feels a strange lightness after the breakup. They convince themselves it was the right decision. Now I can breathe. Now no one is asking too much of me. Now I'm safe again. But relief has a very short lifespan, because once the silence settles, regret begins to whisper. It usually starts small. A quiet thought late at night. I wonder what they're doing right now. A random memory sparked by a familiar song, a cafe you used to go to together, or even just the way the sun hits the window in the morning. Suddenly, you're back in their presence. For the avoidant, this is dangerous territory. They've built their life around controlling closeness and distance. But now, they don't get to control the memories. They don't get to shut off the longing. It sneaks in, uninvited. The emotional push-pull. Here's the paradox. Avoidants regret breaking up not because they want to come back immediately, but because they realize something they never admit out loud. Love matters to them. Deeply. Yet admitting that feels terrifying. To regret means to face their own vulnerability, to face the possibility that maybe they ran too soon, pushed too hard, or let fear drive the wheel. So, instead of sitting with regret, they try to bury it. They distract themselves. Work, hobbies, casual flings, endless scrolling. But no distraction can erase the echo of someone they truly cared about. The push-pull begins. I miss them, but I can't go back. That would make me weak. I wonder if they've moved on. No, I need to stay strong. I chose this. This cycle isn't strength. It's fear disguised as logic. A story to illustrate. Think of Sarah, an avoidant woman who ended things with her boyfriend, James. She told him she wasn't ready for something serious, that she needed space. James was devastated, but respected her choice and didn't chase. At first, Sarah felt powerful. She had her freedom back. But weeks later, while walking through a park, she saw a couple holding hands, laughing, and she felt a pang so sharp it surprised her. She thought of James, his goofy jokes, his steady presence, the way he always made her coffee just right. Her chest tightened. For the first time, she asked herself, did I make a mistake? But instead of calling him, she went home, buried herself in work, and told herself, no, it's better this way. That's the tragedy of the avoidant regret. It often arrives in silence, masked by denial, hidden even from themselves. The psychology of avoidant regret. From a psychological perspective, avoidants experience regret differently. They don't regret in the form of, I lost the love of my life. I must get them back immediately. They regret in waves, subtle, creeping reminders of what they had, mixed with fear that they're incapable of holding on to it. And here's the key. Regret doesn't show up as an apology right away. It shows up as curiosity. They start checking your profile, watching your stories, asking mutual friends about you. They won't say, I miss you, but their behavior begins to circle you again. Why? Because deep down, the avoidant knows they've lost something rare, someone who saw through their walls, someone who loved them despite their distance. And that realization cuts deeper than they let on. This is where the avoidant stands at a crossroads. They can either keep running, pretending they don't care, or they can begin to confront the truth. That regret is not weakness. It's a signal that maybe what they pushed away is what they actually needed most. Now let's go deeper into what happens after an avoidant ends a relationship. Because regret doesn't always show up right away. It often creeps in slowly, sometimes months, sometimes even years later. And the way they process it is very different from what most of us might expect. At first, as we said, they may feel relief, freedom, space, the absence of emotional demands. But as time stretches on, something quieter begins to stir inside them, a kind of echo. It's not loud, not obvious, but it's there. And it whispers, what if I lost something I'll never find again? Avoidants live in contradiction. They crave love but fear its weight. They want closeness, but they've learned to protect themselves from it. So when a breakup happens, the initial relief is real, but it's temporary. Eventually, silence grows heavy, nights get longer, and in those still moments when no one is asking for their time, their energy, their love, they start to feel the ache of absence. Here's the paradox. Avoidants rarely regret in the way you imagine. They don't always think, I shouldn't have ended it. I need to run back right now. Instead, it's subtler. They replay small memories. They remember your laugh in the car, the way you reached for their hand, the safety of being seen, even when they couldn't return it fully. These fragments linger like ghosts. And even if they don't reach out, they carry those pieces with them. Example, Sarah and James. Sarah once told me about her ex, James, who had strong avoidant tendencies. After their breakup, he went silent. No messages, no explanations. She assumed he'd moved on. Months later, out of nowhere, he sent her a text. I drove past that coffee shop we used to go to. Made me think of you. Hope you're doing okay. To Sarah, this message was confusing. To James, it was his way of showing regret. Avoidants rarely say, I miss you outright. But they drop breadcrumbs, small, indirect ways of saying, I haven't forgotten you. You mattered more than I could admit at the time. This is often how regret looks for an avoidant. Not a grand confession, but a quiet acknowledgement wrapped in distance. The psychology of avoidant regret. From a psychological standpoint, this makes sense. Avoidants carry deep fears of shame and rejection. To admit regret openly would mean confronting the truth that they hurt someone they loved. That shame feels unbearable. So instead, they find indirect paths. A random text, a social media like, a song shared. It's regret disguised as casual contact. And yet, behind that, the emotions run deep. Studies in attachment research show that avoidant individuals often suppress emotional responses in the short term. But those emotions don't disappear. They resurface later, often in unexpected waves, which is why regret for them is delayed. It shows up not in the moment, but long after the dust has settled. What this means for you, if you've loved an avoidant and you wonder if they regret letting you go, here's the truth. Yes, many do, but they may never say it in words. They may never come back with an apology or a declaration. Sometimes their regret lives silently inside them, carried like an invisible weight. The question, then, is not just about whether they regret it, but about what you do with that knowledge. Because waiting for their regret to turn into action can keep you stuck in your own pain. Healing means shifting the focus back to you. The healing perspective. Regret, whether they admit it or not, is not your responsibility to fix. It's not proof of your worth. And it's not the closure you might be longing for. The closure comes from within. From saying, yes, I was hurt. Yes, they may regret it. But I choose to rebuild my heart and my life regardless of what they feel. And here's where the growth happens. Loving an avoidant can teach you hard lessons about boundaries, about self-worth, about what you will and will not accept. Their regret may never reach your ears, but your healing can still reach your soul. Reflection. Exercise. If you've been left by an avoidant and you're struggling with, do they regret it? Try this. Write down 3 moments in the relationship where you felt unseen or undervalued. Then write down 3 moments where you showed up fully as yourself. Notice that your worth exists regardless of their recognition. Their regret doesn't define your value. You already proved it in the way you loved, the way you cared, the way you tried. Final thought. Avoidants may regret breaking up, but regret alone doesn't heal. What heals is your choice to stop waiting for their recognition and instead honor your own heart. Remember this: their silence does not erase your significance. Their regret, spoken or unspoken, does not dictate your future. You carry the power to turn this pain into wisdom, and that wisdom is something no breakup can ever take away.